Welcome back. This week, we're looking at a piece on the Dubentonia madagascariensis.
Right.
It's a deep dive into its anatomy, foraging, and really complex conservation status in Madagascar.
And the strength here is obvious. The author's done the homework. The technical details on the anatomy, the genetics, even the ethnoprimatology, it's all there.
It absolutely is. The piece really captures how unique this animal is. You know, it being the most autapomorphic lemur, which is just a technical way of saying it's the weirdest of its cousins.
Totally. And all the specialized tools are listed. You've got the rodent lake teeth, the huge ears.
And of course, that impossibly long middle finger.
Exactly.
Okay, so here's the thing. The author knows all the components, but I think the overall presentation could be much more powerful with a structural change.
I agree. The facts are impressive, but they feel a bit fragmented.
Right. So the overall impact of the material can be maximized by structuring the biological introduction around the concept of convergent evolution to immediately showcase the II's unique solution to a common ecological problem.
Yes, and the weakness, as it stands, is that the material introduces all that specialized anatomy, the finger, the ears, the teeth, as sort of discrete facts.
Yeah, you learn about the tools one by one, but the punchline gets lost.
The punchline being that this primate is essentially a biological woodpecker.
And separating the tools from that punchline, it dilutes the whole evolutionary story.
So the suggestion is to flip the narrative entirely.
How so?
Use the percussive foraging strategy as the central point, the main axis. Don't start with the animal's parts, start with the job it needs to do.
Oh, I like that. So you immediately establish this idea of the woodpecker niche. You start by saying, look, Madagascar doesn't have woodpeckers.
Exactly. But it has wood-boring grubs, Xylophagus larvae. So something had to evolve to get them. And then all the anatomical features become solutions to that problem.
Right. So the huge ears aren't just big ears. They're for tap scanning, for listening to the tiny reverberations of insects deep inside the wood.
And the continuously growing incisors aren't just a weird quirk. They're chisels for gnawing through that hard outer layer of bark and wood.
And then you bring in the showstopper.
The middle digit.
That thin probe-like finger with its crazy mobility from that unique ball and socket joint. That's the extraction tool.
It completes the picture. The ears locate the target, the teeth breach the barrier, and the finger pulls out the prize. It's a perfect toolkit.
And to really nail this idea of convergent evolution, you have to bring in that other example.
Oh yeah, the striped possum, Dactylopsila trivirgata.
Which is in Australia and New Guinea, a marsupial, completely unrelated.
But it evolved an elongated finger and powerful jaws to do the exact same thing. It's just a spectacular example of evolution finding the same answer twice.
It really is. It shows the II isn't just weird for the sake of being weird. It's an engineering marvel. But wait, there was that one genetic detail that makes this even cooler.
Yes, you can't leave this out. So while its foraging method functionally mimics echolocation, listening to internal structures, the genetics tell a different story.
What did they find?
Genomic analysis found no significant signal of amino acid convergence with true echolocators like bats or dolphins.
Wow. So it built a system that works like echolocation, but it didn't use the same genetic blueprints?
Not at all. It invented the whole process from scratch on its own evolutionary path.
That's a killer detail. That takes it from a description to a real analysis of a unique evolutionary event.
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So that shift will make the whole opening so much stronger. Now let's move from the biology to the cultural side of things. This is where it gets really complicated.
The contradictory beliefs around the II, but again, I think it's about the framing.
So what's the topic sentence here?
To provide a robust, non-reductive introduction, the material should frame the complex cultural perceptions around the II not merely as superstition, but as a deep, regionally variant paradox within Malagasy traditional beliefs, known as fadi.
Okay, and the weakness right now is that it just feels like a confusing list, right? On one hand, it's an evil omen, a harbinger of death, killed on sight.
And on the other, it's revered as an ancestral spirit, it's tied to fertility, it even gets elaborate funerals. It's too much contradiction without a framework.
So what's the core idea that's missing?
The unifying concept is that the animal is seen as being inhabited by a powerful spiritual force. It's never just an animal. It's either an evil spirit or an honored ancestor spirit, a razana.
And the fadi, the system of taboos, is what dictates the response.
Exactly. It dictates whether you must protect that spiritual container or destroy it.
So the suggestion is to focus on that tension and then show the radically different actions people take depending on the region.
Yes, show it through behavior. For a concrete example, you set up a really sharp contrast. So in the Northeast, the fadi says the eye brings death.
So what do?
When they see one, they have to act. They'll kill it, and sometimes they'll hang the body or just its tail on a pole at a crossroads.
The idea being that travelers will pass by and carry the curse away with them, right? It diverts the bad luck from the community.
Precisely. Now, you pivot hard from that, and you contrast it with the reverence you find in some Eastern areas.
Where the fada demands protection.
Right. And if one is found dead there or killed by accident, it might be treated with the honor you'd give a deceased king.
And we're talking about real mortuary practices.
Oh, yeah. Wrapping the body in a lamba, a traditional shroud, sometimes placing money on it, then burying it or placing it high up on a tree shelf.
So you have this insane contrast between curse diversion and a state funeral for a primate.
That juxtaposition makes the paradox crystal clear. You're not just dealing with superstition. You're dealing with deep, conflicting religious practices.
And you have to connect this to the present day, mentioning something like the Aku Project.
Yes, the educational efforts, the children's books and lesson plans that are trying to shift this narrative from fear to fascination. It shows this is a live, ongoing conservation problem.
And you have to add that less detail, that the animal's rarity actually makes the problem worse.
It really does. Because it's so rare, a sighting becomes an easy scapegoat for anything bad that happens next. A crop fails, someone gets sick. It must have been the eye. It just feeds the fear.
That's a much richer way to handle the cultural dynamics. Okay, for our last point, let's go back to the anatomy. You did a great job on the hand as a foraging tool, but we're missing part of the story.
The cost of that specialization.
Exactly. A complete profile requires explicitly detailing how the highly specialized hands, while perfect for foraging, present unique physical challenges during the eye's demanding arboreal locomotion.
And the weakness in the draft now is that these constraints are sort of an afterthought. It mentions a clumsy gait on the ground, but doesn't really explain why.
It misses the chance to show the animal's holistic adaptability.
So the solution is to connect the foraging tool, the hand, with the strategies the animal uses to protect it. That long, thin finger is its most valuable instrument.
But it's also incredibly fragile. It's a classic evolutionary trade-off.
So you can start with just walking on the ground. When it does that, it can't just put its hand down flat.
Because it would risk snapping that finger.
Right. So they have to raise those clawed fingers up, which results in that very strange, shuffling gait. It's a protective posture.
That detail alone makes the clumsy gait make so much more sense. It's functional.
But the really cool part is how they manage this in the trees. You know, they're climbing, leaping, and they often descend branches head first.
Which must put a ton of stress on the front limbs.
A huge amount. And if that long finger takes too much of that force, it's done for.
So what's the specific adaptation to prevent that?
It's behavioral. Studies have shown that when they're descending, they significantly reduce their body angle relative to the branch.
So they flatten themselves out more?
Yes, exactly. So if they're moving horizontally, their body might be at, say, a 17-degree angle to the branch. But when they start to descend head first, they drop that angle down to about 8 degrees.
And what does that do?
And onto the stronger parts of the limb and the body. It's an amazing, calculated move.
That is the perfect detail to cap off the anatomical profile. You show the tool, and then you show the specialized defense mechanism needed to protect the tool.
It completes the picture of its adaptation.
Absolutely. Adding that integration moves a piece from just descriptive to truly analytical.
And putting all three of these things together, the evolutionary story, the cultural paradox, and this mechanical compromise, that will give the reader a truly complete understanding of this creature.
Okay, so to summarize, you've got a really solid foundation here, but to really elevate it, we're suggesting 3 main shifts. First, reframe the biology around the woodpecker niche and convergent evolution.
Right, turn that list of features into a compelling story. Second,
Focus the cultural part on the regional paradox of Fady. Contrast the extreme practices, the killing versus the funerals.
And third, complete the anatomical profile by integrating its locomotor constraints, detailing how it adjusts its body angle during descent to protect those vital fingers.
These 3 steps are really actionable, and they'll transform this from a good descriptive piece into a powerful analytical profile. We are very much looking forward to seeing the next draft.
As always, please take these ideas, revise your work, and send it back to the critique. We'll see you next